At 30 minutes, this is a fairly long video, but we will be covering all this stuff in today's video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm shooting this video with my son Sajeel. He shoots time to time as well. His channel is Sajeel Akbar. And today we are going to talk about the knives, the types of blades, the types of steel that is used in them. Sajeel is more knowledgeable about this topic, so I will give him the stage today and I will let him talk about the blades. I will come in the video time to time and assist, but today that's his day, and we'll talk about the knives that he and I have collected over the years. So over to you, Sajeel.
So starting with knife logistics in Canada, as with any weapon like bear spray, mace, brass knuckles, gravity knives, balisongs, and push daggers, these are legal to be used as weapons, but every knife here has and will continue to be used as tools. Among laws, things such as butterflies, balisongs, push daggers, gravity knives, switchblades, and autos, among a few others like nunchucks and bow staffs and whatnot, those are all illegal to be carried as weapons or in general to be owned in Canada. As for all the knives here, there are a bunch of different styles which we will go into as far as opening mechanisms go and means of deployment. So as far as knives go, when you think of a knife, you traditionally think of a folder, so meaning a single hand or two-handed deployment where you pull the knife out of the side, but another style is out the front. So those typically happen in autos or automatic knives or switchblades, as most people know them. That's where you use a slide or a trigger or a button, and the knife shoots out the front or the side of the blade, side of the handle itself. Now, traditionally over here, we have fixed blades and we have side openings. Alright, so one of the main uses for knives within Canada are fishing and camping. So let's look at a couple. So when you think of camping, another main tool that comes into play as far as blades go are axes. So axes, you can get hatchets, single hands, dual hands. You can get Viking. You can go butcher knives. You can get a bunch of different styles, but they're all essentially the same as far as what an axe is used for, and that main use is typically cutting wood.
Since we have a number of different knives on the table, can you quickly introduce us to the types of knives available?
Yeah, so starting with one of the two main types of knives that you typically find, we have fixed blades, which is essentially one piece of metal with either a single or dual piece block of some sort of handle material to hold the blade together and give you some sort of grasp on the actual blade itself. So we have your standard fixed blades. You can get them in large sizes or smaller EDC sizes for daily carries for either knife prep or any sort of smaller tasks around the day. But you also have traditional folding knives, which are typically in two forms, locking and unlocking. So we have a bunch of knives over here. So this is your standard folding knife, which has a lock bar on it. So this style of knife is called a frame lock. You also have your traditional non-locking folder knives, typically referred to as slip joints, where you usually have to use a two-handed open, and that means that there's no actual sort of bar or sort of insert that locks the blade. Hence, these aren't really meant for heavy uses because you do have the potential of having them close in on your fingers like that. This particular one is called a dual detent slip joint, which means it won't actually shut down on your fingers because you have a second stop right here that prevents it from closing all the way. Now, vast majority of people don't actually need a dedicated knife in their day-to-day lives. That's where multi-tools come into play. Now, the two main competitors within multi-tools are Victorinox with their Swiss Army knives and Leatherman's with their multi-tool series as well.
Yeah, just to add that Victorinox and Wenger, these are the two major competitors in Swiss Army knives.
Now, let's move on to one of the ones we have here. So we have your classic Wenger Swiss Army knife. The other competitor is Victorinox, which many more people actually go for since it is a slightly bigger name based right out of Switzerland. But your multi-tool typically has along the lines of a plier, a scissor, a knife, and some sort of either flathead or a Phillips style screwdriver, among a file and a saw. Those are typically the main tools that you would see within a classic Swiss Army knife or any sort of multi-tool. This one here is among the bigger ones, which has many other tools as well, though it entirely depends on your use because they do have different ones for different prices. Now the other main competitor for multi-tools is your classic Leatherman. So the ones we have on the table here, we have the Leatherman Charge Plus in titanium. Same deal, you have your knife, you have your saw blades, you have your serrated blade, you have a file, and you have your pliers, among scissors as well. So the one we have here is a Charge Plus TTI. We have your Wave, and we also have your Free P4. These are some of just the bigger names that they have within their brand at the moment.
Well, Sajeel, that's wonderful intro of different types of knives. Now, since you mentioned something about the locking mechanism on the knives,
Yeah.
can you like elaborate more on that? Since I think that's a
So,
big thing to talk
on that
about.
topic, two of the main things that you're looking for in a knife is the way it locks, as well as what the deployment method is for it. So typically, as far as deployment methods go, you have your flipper tabs, like we have over here. So you have a flipper at the back, and that's how you would deploy your knife. You have any sort of finger notch, which is some sort of hole or a notch, like a cutout that's within the knife, and you can use that to deploy your knife. And you also have just standard finger nicks, which you typically see in traditional slip joints. You would use that and slide it out two-handed with your fingernail. So some of the other common locking methods that you'd have are your standard frame lock. So a standard folding knife has two bits to it. You have your outside scale and you have your inside scale. So for this knife in particular, you have what's called a frame lock, where the outside scale actually pushes in to cover the actual notch of the blade, and that's what keeps it from folding down on your fingers.
Can you show me another example which is similar?
Another example of a frame lock knife is this one. Now back to flippers, this is also a flipper tab, but as opposed to the standard traditional flipper where you would have your flipper at the back, this one is what we call a front flipper. So you would flick the knife open from the front like that. Cool. Yet again, same story. You have the outside scale which comes in to lock the frame, and this one has what we call a steel bar insert, where it has a little insert at the front to prevent the actual lock bar from moving off the outside of the knife and bending. So another common locking method that you find in traditional folding knives is what we call a liner lock, where it's not actually the scale on either side of the knife, but rather an insert or a liner on the inside that folds in. That way you don't actually have to put pressure on the lock itself when you're trying to open it. You can hold the knife in any position whatsoever and still get the deployment out nice and smooth without having to press down on the bar itself. The same method as a traditional frame lock, you have a liner that pushes in and locks out the blade. Go. So three of the other main locking methods that you would find in a knife. One of these is called a compression lock, which is essentially a liner lock, but on the back of the knife as opposed to the front of it. Same method, you would move the liner off to the side and it locks the blade into free fall. Another style is this one right over here. Same thing, but you have, so this one's by Benchmade, where you have the official patent. It's called an axis lock, but you find others like this called axis style locks. But essentially, it's a bar that goes across the back and it kind of fits into a notch on the back of the blade. And you would pull the ball or the spring off, and that unlocks the knife, and that's how you would unlock it. Two of the main locking styles are these, which is called a button lock, but unlike an auto, this isn't a spring-loaded button, but rather just a free-falling button, which works similar to an axis lock. You push this, and it releases the pin at the back, which fits into the blade's notch over here, and that is how it would unlock. Another method over here is just a free lock. So this is a traditional kind of knife that you would find in World War II. Essentially, it just folds out like that, but rather than actually having a lock over here, you simply have a clamp that comes down and holds the two bits of the knife scales together. And that's how it will lock. So now you have many different styles of knife blades or knife blade profiles. This one, for example, is a standard drop point, which you would see in most blades, which means you have a high belly, a lot more cutting edge, but it doesn't come up to a sharp point which curves upwards. Rather, the end of the tip actually comes down. Same with this one. This is another style drop point, but you'd rather have it in a fixed blade as opposed to a folder. Same thing, high, long belly, but the blade comes down at the end to the point rather than curving up. Another style that you have over here, you have your dagger points, which is essentially like a spear, but you have both points actually coming to a sharpened end at the end, and that way you can use either side as a cutting edge. Some of the ones over here, you have your Bowie styles, which is the classic Rambo style knife. You have the long slender blade, you have it go up to the halfway point, and then kind of curves down into a swoop. So you have two Bowie style blades here. This is a standard clip point Bowie, and then you have a standard regular Bowie. Now some of the other styles that you have, like a butcher knife, you have your cleaver style blades, which are essentially just boxed off, but you have a nice flat straight belly at the very bottom. You also have these kinds, which are called reverse tanto. So you may know a regular tanto, which comes straight and then comes up at a point with the sharpened edge, which is essentially this in reverse. But this is a reverse tanto, where the belly is nice and deep, but you have the end, which is unsharpened, coming down like a right angle. Another common one you have is your standard clip point, which, unlike a drop point, which comes down at the end, a clip point typically tends to point a little higher up at the end of the blade. Still comes down to a sharp point at the end, but your blade actually curves upwards near the end of the actual blade profile. Similar to this one over here. Right over here, you have your standard clip point blade, which is on your Leatherman charge. And same thing, nice.
Bring it down a little. Yeah,
Right
here. Go.
So same thing over here. You have a nice long deep belly, but at the end of the blade, you don't actually have it come down. It clips and curves upwards a bit, hence the clip point. This is also clip point, but based on this maker, your clip point is essentially just straight down the blade. It doesn't curve up or curve down, but rather goes straight in line along the spine of the blade, and then the belly curves up. Now, two of the remaining styles, like the dagger point, you have a spear point, which is like the dagger point on both sides, but rather than having the back end sharpened, the back end is blunt, but still comes down to that end where both points kind of meet symmetrically in the middle. And then you also have sheep's foot style blades. So there's two of these. This is your standard kind of Warney sheep or Warncliffe sheep, where you have the belly essentially straight, but the end comes down to meet the belly at the base. And then you have this one as well, which is also a sheep's foot, but your traditional sheep's foot. So you'll notice it has a bit of a bend over here, and then it comes down a bit more aggressively towards the end of the blade. But the blade belly is essentially straight rather than curving up or down. So now three other knife style blades that you may see fairly commonly. This one I don't plan to use, but it's your standard karambit style blade. So this one in particular is a hawkbill karambit, which means that essentially the blade looks more like a hawk's bill as opposed to a standard kind of curved blade. You have your scimitar style blade, which is based off those Persian daggers of old or Persian knives. You have just a really high blade profile and it just curves straight up at the end. That is another style blade. But you also have another one that's fairly common called a recurve style blade, which essentially means the blade starts off pretty shallow between the spine and the actual blade profile, but then curves down, then up. Now these can come in either clip points, buoys, drop points, or any other style blade, but it's essentially the belly that we're looking at where it comes down, then back up. So another leading factor that helps people decide what they want to buy and what kind of knife style they want is the way it carries. Now, knives can be carried a bunch of ways. For example, fixed blades, you typically have them hooked to a belt, on some sort of loop that goes around your pants, or any other sort of holster or sheath that you want to carry either on a vest or on your pant line. So take this one for example. Now this one actually comes with both styles. So you have a little loop over here in the form of just standard nylon that you can clip onto your belt and just have it go around for a vertical carry. But this one also allows you to do a horizontal carry in the form of what's called a scout carry. So you loop your belt through these two holes here, and you can either do a front appendix style scout carry, or carry it around your back for a rear scout carry. Now another type of carry which also applies to fixed blades is the pocket clip itself. So take these two for example. This one you typically clip onto a life vest. It has the clip that goes right over here. So you would carry on the loop of your vest. Or you have your standard Mora knife. But this one has a clip right along the base of the sheath over here, which you would simply clip into a pant leg just like that, and you would use it in a vertical carry. Now as far as folding knives goes, there's typically two styles of pocket clip carries that you want to hold. You have your deep carry, which for example in a knife like this, the pocket clip, the open area of it actually comes right down to the end of the knife, so you can carry it all the way down into your pant leg without having any bit extrude. Other style is a non-deep carry pocket clip. Notice how this one, the clip doesn't actually carry right to the end of the knife. You do have a bit that's sticking out, and that's just preference. This way you can get a little pinch on the knife rather than having to dig your hand into your pocket to take it out.
So if you can just give me a quick tour of the knives along with the prices so that we get an idea.
So like with any product, you can get cheap knives for a couple of bucks, or you can go upwards of say $3,000 for your knives. And I know one of the main stigmas and questions that people get about knives is, why did you spend that much on a single knife? You could have bought a car, or you could have bought a gun. It all depends on your use. Better knives, for example, have better handle materials, better steel, easier methods of deployment, longer longevity or the hardness of the steel. And it also depends on what your actual budget is. Beyond a certain point, of course, it does become a piece of art, but that is entirely a person's preference from person to person. So let's talk about budget. Now, the typical sweet spot in my personal opinion as far as knives goes is anywhere between 25 and 50 bucks. That gives you the best bang for buck on your knife. Granted, some do go beyond $100 or a couple of $1,000, but we'll stick with what we have on the table here. Now, as far as fixed blades go, one of the standard worldwide go-to budget knives is the Mora knife. This you can find at any sort of outdoor store like MEC, Bass Pro, Sale. This is your standard $10 to $20 budget fixed blade knife that you would usually see in camping trips and whatnot.
Yeah, I will add here, this particular Mora, this is a Swedish knife, and they start at about $25, and they have few $100 knives as well. This particular one, this is I think 35. This is the entry level knife, and this is about $35.
Now, where that price changes, like with any knife, is handle material and steel. This you have standard ACR13 MOV steel, as well as a rubber coated injection mold plastic grip knife. Now you can get them in full plastic, but you can also find them in materials like G10, which is a sort of layered canvas style knife. Now on the table we also have fixed blades like this. So this one in particular cost about $150, but the benefit with this one is you get better handle material as well as better steel. So now this one in particular, I have N690 style steel, which essentially is easier maintenance, easier to sharpen, still holds a long lifespan as far as the durability of the blade goes, but is also somewhat corrosion resistance. As far as the blade material goes for the handle, this one in particular is what we call micarta, which is canvas style material. It maintains a nice patina over the years, but is also very sturdy and grippy.
With that said, as you talk about the age or longevity of the life of the knife, I see that some of the knives on our desk or the table, they're about 60, 70 or 80 years old. For instance, this knife or this knife or this knife. These are very, very old knives that we have been using over the years, and probably maybe our parents have used those as well.
Yeah, and the benefit with these ones is they may have cost more in the day, but the longevity of the knife actually withstands the test of time since they have lasted and are still being used to this day. They still function perfectly fine, the pivot is smooth, the blade is still sharp, and the knife holds up. Some of the other things that affect blade prices are stuff like this. So this is an antique style knife. Although not from that time, it is a style of blade that was used back in World War II. So this was about 15 bucks off Amazon. But it's more so a memorabilia of that time and what style of blades they had back then. Or you can get items like this, which you find in any sort of souvenir shop while camping or out somewhere. It's trinkety, it's finicky, but it's more so just meant as a souvenir for a display piece.
And if needed, it does the job, right?
Roughly. Now back to budget. Same with fixed blades, you do get budget folder knives. So there are different styles that you need to pay attention to. This one, for example, in particular, is meant as a dress-up knife. It is only about 20 bucks. It does have a nice steel, a nice carbon fiber handle. It is super light, but the style of knife is meant to go into a suit pocket because it's more of a classy carry. It's not something that you would carry, say, out in the wilderness. Now, there are knives that specialize within the budget range of knives, but they do have higher end knives. This one, for example, in particular, is by a company called QSP, and this one is called the Penguin. So you have a micarta style blade, you do get your deep carry pocket clip, you have a steel liner lock, and you also have a sheep's foot style blade, but it's great for the price. It's 25 bucks, and I highly recommend it. Along with other budget knives, there's many different styles. You have this one as well by a company called Honey Badger. Very affordable, injection mold plastic, and it's just an overall really good knife. Now,
What is the price of this one?
This one in particular is about 20 bucks.
Okay.
When you think budget, most people immediately go to something like a Victorinox or a Swiss Army knife or something like a Leatherman Squirt, which is by that same Leatherman company from earlier, but it's their affordable, pocketable version. Very budget friendly, like 20 bucks off Amazon. Very pocketable, super small, gets the job done. It's not meant for heavy use.
But Sajeel, if we talk about these Swiss Army knives or the Leathermans, although they offer a lot, but they're not really budget friendly. There are very few which are cheap. But
it's a heavy asterisk, but they claim to be budget friendly because they have relatively affordable items, although they lack in material or some sort of features.
So, for example, if you can talk about these Leathermans here,
Yep.
these are not really cheap knives,
So you think,
although they offer a lot.
Yep, you think, okay, it offers a lot, and they claim to be budget friendly, but they can range upwards of a couple of $100s. This one in particular is their free P4 series, which runs on magnetic
Can you show me
bearings.
the side of this one?
Now, this one ranges from 180 bucks upwards on top of customizations. So like blade etching, for example, or blade customizations. This one starts at about 230 bucks. Same thing, you get your titanium version, you have versions with G10, but it's also higher end steel. So for example, this one uses a style of steel called S35VN, which essentially just means much sharper, easier to maintain, better longevity of steel, etc.
And these ones offer you all kinds of customizations. Where's the one where we have a customization on it? Which one? So we have on a couple of them actually. This one here.
Yeah.
So we have some customization designs done on these ones, and they charge you extra for that.
Yeah, per customization, you can get different laser etchings on this one, but only on the primary blade. Whereas there's ones like this is the Charge TTI. Although they don't let you customize the blades themselves, this one lets you customize the scales. So, for example, this one has a topographic pattern right on the scales themselves, the actual steel part, because you can't really laser etch the titanium.
And interesting enough that we have our name etched on it as well, Adventures with Adil. So yeah, you can do a lot of customizations on these knives, and that's why they're very, very popular, although they're not really budget, but they offer you a lot, although not the best quality of steel is used in these.
Same among the Victorinox knives, same thing applies. You can get them within the fairly budget range, but of course it goes up as opposed to the number, based on the number of tools that you use. So for example, this one is just 5 tools: scissor, knife, file, tweezers, needle, or toothpick. This one in particular has, I think, about 24 tools. So this one skyrockets in price. But same thing, although Victorinox and Wenger don't do it in-house, there are certified customizers or knife modders in the community who do actually do custom pieces with new scales. They'll do laser etchings, they'll do knife mods, they'll replace different tools with other tools that people might want to use more. I'm going to crank it right up. We're going to go all the way to the end of the scale. Some of the benefits for higher end knives is the material itself. This one, for example, this knife costs about 400 bucks. And yes, I know the comments are going to come in saying, why would you spend that much on the knife? Main thing is blade profile, customization, personalization, and the materials themselves. This one is full titanium, although black washed through an acid etch. This one has different shades of titanium on there. It's a frame lock. As opposed to a steel pocket clip, it has a milled titanium pocket clip, and it has M390 steel, which is a very high hardened steel. So now you have these two. Now these ones in particular, this one has a reverse Tonto S90V steel, but thumb studs, access lock, carbon fiber handles. This one is aluminum S35, sorry, CPM 20CV steel, reverse Tonto. The benefit with these, just better ergonomics, higher end steel, same story, different locking mechanisms. So this one has the button lock, this one has an access lock.
What are the prices on these?
Now these two in particular are $380 and $360 in price. Now you may think, okay, bigger the knife the better, right? The more expensive, more materials used. Not exactly. This one in particular is actually fairly small if you look at it, but same story. High-end M390 steel, carbon fiber top scale, titanium bottom scale. Although it's missing it, this one has a zirconium ball within the pocket clip. But very nice ergonomics, handmade within Italy. So that's also where the price comes up, because it's mainly handmade by a professional popular maker, Jesper Voxnes. But overall, really good ergonomics, good materials, very nice knife. 380 bucks. Now let's go to outdoor knives. In this essence of hunting, fishing, camping, you have different uses for different knives. For example, this one in particular, you may recognize the name, popular fishing company, Shimano. Standard fillet knife, long, slender blade, thin profile, and also relatively bendy, but that's so that you can get into the knife, gut it out, make those fillets, and prep the fish all nice and clean. Now, other
Maybe
stuff,
20 bucks or so?
I mean, it depends.
that.
You can get this one for about 20 bucks. I believe this one in particular is about 49 out of Bass Pro, but entirely depends. This one is aimed more towards hunting, so yet again, high-end steel, but you get a nice rubberized grip for that good handle. You get that serration, which I'm not personally a fan of, but it does help in harder cuts like wood or bone. But you do get that thicker stock meant for hunting or heavy use, so you can baton this knife, you can beat on it, and this one just works really well for hunting trips because it holds up to that.
Price?
Price on this one is about 120 bucks.
So what are the kind of prices one should expect from these Bear Grylls or Gerber knives?
So from older Gerber knives, they do have a higher price range today, but this one was about, say, 50 bucks. You have 25 bucks, 40 bucks. You have, I think it was 60 for this hatchet. Another niche topic as far as owning knives go, it's legal to own, illegal to carry though, meaning you can't open carry it out in the public. So you have karambit knives. This one essentially is a finger ring knife or a push dagger, where it's small and concealable, under 6 inches in total length for the knife. So it's not legal to carry, but you're allowed to own one. Same thing applies to things like bow staffs, gravity knives, or nunchucks, or even throwing knives.
So it's like classic that you can
They're
have it in your
classics,
collection.
essentially collectibles. Exactly. You have throwing knives, for example. They're legal to own and legal to buy, but not legal to carry. Among that, you have stuff like knives, or swords, essentially. Now, this is a handmade custom katana. Not very expensive. This one's only $150 out of this US company called Handbin Forge. And this is a hand-sharpened, custom-made katana. Legal to own, perfectly sharp, very viable, but you're not allowed to carry it. Same thing with collectible items like this antique sword from a game called Assassin's Creed. Not sharpened at all, just a display piece. I can't carry it in public, but I can have it in my house. These are all classic knives. They're not ones you would carry, they're not ones you would actually use, but they're just display pieces. So this is more of an antique scimitar. It's mainly just a decoration piece. You wouldn't actually carry it. These ones, however, can be used, but they are about 100 years old or very vintage and antique, and mainly just display pieces, not meant for actual use nowadays.
All right. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And wait for the next video. We'll come up with another exciting video. And thanks to Sajeel for being part of this video with me. Thanks and goodbye. Until next time, take care.